All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mercatani. Welcome back to Matt Chat. Pleased to be joined by the newest coach of the Sunkist kids, Mark Perry. Mark, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, for sure, you're the biggest story in wrestling right now, so I appreciate you taking some time. You're still locked down in Iowa City right now?
Yeah, we've been locked down since the quarantine and just hanging out with my little ones and my wife, and obviously going through this whole process as well, but lots of family time.
Yeah, for sure. I think people have a lot of questions. I'm going to try to ask the ones I think that people want to know. Maybe let's just start with, when did the idea of leaving Hawkeye begin? And was it always going to be to Sunkist, or was it more of, I want to go to Sunkist, that's why I'm leaving, or was just you felt like your time at Hawkeye?
Yeah. To be, completely honest, there was no thought. I don't think there was any thought for anyone really. We expected to be making the Olympic team and then be getting ready for Tokyo right now.
Right.
Obviously, it was super sad, not only for the Iowa Hawkeyes, but the NCAA tournament to get canceled. When that was happening, we were up at the Pan American Olympic qualifier, and we thought that was going to get canceled because, we were hearing stuff about the NCAAs, but that went through. We blindly thought they were still going to have the Olympic trials, just with no fans or something like that. And, once that happened, it's not like poor us, the whole world's suffering a lot more than the sport of wrestling.
Yeah.
But it just kind of, everything came, obviously I think everyone, if you look at, Gilman making a move or something, he wasn't going nowhere. He planned on making the team, getting ready for the Olympic Games, So once that happened, there's a lot of movement on the college scene, and there were some calls I got and seeing if there was some interest. And when I thought about it and talked to my wife and just the next phase of where we want to be personally and as a family, there was definitely some interest there, and then things started really. But it wasn't like a plan or something. The plan was make the Olympics, help the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, get some Olympic medals and move forward with the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. But the world works in crazy ways, and, here we are.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned a lot of people there, but Thomas, you talked about specifically Gilman. And, I saw his interviews, and I know you guys were extremely close. So, what's interesting, like you said, is if this COVID thing happens, say in September instead of now, you guys go through this whole process together. You're obviously, you're his guy. Your goal is he makes the team, wins an Olympic gold medal. Tell me your perspective of your relationship with Thomas. Let's just start with that. How do you see your relationship with Thomas, and how did it, grow so quickly? Because you guys have really only been together a couple of years.
Yeah. When I first got here, I was kind of like maybe like an extra spark plug for him. Not that he already didn't have enough with, Tom Terry and Mike DeRoe and just the whole staff, but I was just really a kind of his pump man and said, hey, here, and here, I think you can do some special things. And then obviously at the World Championships, it was more of, be aware of this, and this with the Iranian, or No Deer, who's now in Iowa City. And, so I was more of his pump man and just doing my part to help him, do the best he can. And as time went on, people want to make a big deal and make it into a drama scene with him or Spencer or the past. But to me, that's what every program should be striving for, is having that kind of rivalry right within your program. If you look at Japan on the women's side, they're all in the same place. You look at Dagestan and Ossetia, they're all in the same place. You can go to Azerbaijan, you can go to Georgia. A lot of the 1, 2, 3s, 4s, they're button heads day and day. So I think that is more of for me, when I look at it, that's more of a compliment to Iowa. They're obviously, this is where, they've been building the top lightweights in the country. And, right now you can look at and say the same thing with Penn State. They have a lot of guys that in those bigger weights that could be contending. So, it's more of a positive, but with with Gilman, it just built over time. You know, we've traveled, we've been, I don't know to how many countries together. We kind of figured out each other as far as me coaching him and him being, you know, just kind of hearing my voice and being able to react throughout the matches. And yeah, it's been an awesome relationship. I've been in those before with guys, you know, where obviously when I was assistant coach, I was more involved with the wrestling part, you know, so the relationship's been awesome. I mean, he's everything you want in an athlete as far as he's a professional. It's not like I got to hold his hand. He's going to do it every single day. He's going to do it whether he's in Iowa City or he was in Tempe or he's in State College. He's a professional. So I'm super grateful to have cross paths with him. You know, it's sad. I mean, it really does for me feel like deja vu with Boris in 15, where I thought he was wrestling at a high level, beating the top guys in the world. But that's his life, I guess. You know, everything's doesn't always go the way you would like it to, but I love him to death. And yeah, I mean, he's been an awesome part of my life. He's been a tremendous Hawkeye, and you know, I'm sure we're going to cross paths again.
Yeah, I'm sure. And, you know, it sounds like you guys have a real friendship. And I think in your position to call him a professional is one of the biggest compliments he can receive. You know, like you said, you don't have to hold his hand, you don't have to babysit him. It's just more about probably tweaking things to help him get a little bit better. You know, one of the things that I've always wondered about the international stuff is, and I'm just going to use probably like an opponent that most fans would know more so than some of the foreign fans, but like the Dayton Fix series, right? Like there were some situations where it, you know, looked like he would lose when Thomas would shoot, he would lose, you know, not the other way around. How much time after a series like that do you guys work on, hey, when you have his leg elevated, you know, that waterfall position or whatever you want to call it, how much do you guys literally break, take down and go, he can go in one of 3 directions and you can go in one of 4 directions? And how detailed is that? I'm a nerd. I always wanted to guys handle that.
You know, when you're getting ready for the competition, it's no different, honestly, to me than a professional boxer or fighter. You're just super aware of the position. They're dangerous here. This is dangerous. If you break down the series, he's scored 80-something% of his scores have come from here, you know, and really we went over the positions, but the match he lost at Final X, you know, the year before, it was on him. Your stubbornness, your bullheadedness. You knew not to go there. But he went there anyway. And I think that's where he grew a lot in this last year. It is a chess match, and you can take big risks, but sometimes when you're that good and you're positionally and as good as those senior level guys, you play the percentage game. You know, you play the percentage game where you can still go out there and be hell on wheels coming forward, but there's no risk. There's no need to be in a high crotch with, say, the Russian, because he's so good at that weird chest wrap all those Dagestan guys do. You don't need to be there to beat him. You can beat him in several other ways. Right. You know, doesn't mean you can't get there, but then you're playing a game of 50-50. It's kind of like the best one probably pops into heads in America is Bull and Chinzo.
Yes.
You know, you don't need to be there to win the match. You can win here, and here, but it's entertaining. It's a lot of fun to watch. But, you know, when it comes down to purely winning, sometimes you got to be smarter. And he just got really smart. He got really smart. He got really savvy. I still think he can I think he's hitting his prime years of his career, you know. I mean, if you look, he's always been a physical specimen, but even more so, just being around him so much, you can see his body tightening up more and more. He's getting just more and more of a man. So I think he's just gotten smarter. He's gotten smarter, a little savvier. And I think he's hitting his prime right now, you know. So with Fix, yeah, I mean, a lot of it, but more than anything, it was I was more upset at him than, why did you go there? Like, why would you do that? But, you know, that happens. They're the athlete, we're the coach. You know, at the end of the day, they're the ones wrestling. And you live and you learn. You know, had it went his way and all those scrambles, you know, I'd be praising the other way around. So, But he knows. I mean, he's become he's always been a great wrestler. But I mean, I follow that weight class probably more than anybody in the world. So I'm very aware of that weight class, both in the States and internationally. And he's right there. If he's smart and he's calculated, doesn't mean he's not going to be who he's always been, but he's calculated of knowing like, hey, I got to be ready on the whistle starts versus this Indian. This Indian gets his hands to your leg, it's a problem. Stuff like that. If he's aware with the top guys on any given day, I truly believe that he can be the Olympic champion.
Yeah, those things are all really interesting. And I think everybody knows obviously your family background and, how you grew up and your success and your whole family's success. But it seems to me like you're a guy that has studied international wrestling maybe more than a lot of people, period, and especially a lot of people your age. That stuff has always fascinated you, just from talking to you privately, just, when we were in the same places. And even when there weren't RTC, so to speak, and you were using that to help your collegiate guys, you've always been fascinated with these, the international styles. And, they clearly wrestle differently, just like there's West Coast and East Coast wrestling in the States, even just different names for the same moves in some cases. But, I'm very interested in why that fascinates you so much. Where do you think you're growing maybe more than other people? And you said one thing like about that high crotch position and the weird chest strap, like 50-50, like, when we coach MMA guys and, with my dad, he was always like, try to get in a position against somebody who's really good where it's like 20-0, where you might score 1 out of 5, but he'll never score. As those, and 50-50 is good when you're losing. 50 good when you're winning.
No.
So, maybe just, I know I asked a bunch, why did international wrestling fascinate you probably at such a young age? And where do you feel like maybe you've made gains that other people haven't as a result of it?
I don't know if I've made gains, I don't know what other people are doing. I'm pretty, I'm obviously now, especially I've grown up a lot since having kids. Since having kids, I'm on lockdown for the most part. I think me and my wife have been out to eat maybe 2 or 3 times, like literally outside of meeting with people that help in fundraising stuff in Iowa City. I think we've literally went out and entertained ourselves like 2 or 3 times in Iowa City since we've been here. So, for me with the freestyle is why not try to be ahead of the curve, not necessarily like myself competing against another coach. I don't care what they're doing. And, but for the athlete I'm working with, why not be aware? Why not try to be aware? Why not try to add? And again, it's not like you're trying to add a new style. Maybe you can get to a single leg from a collar tie, but all of a sudden now you can get to it from a wrist, you can get to it from an elbow, you can get to it from an underhook. That's a different wrestler, completely different wrestler. Versus if you know a guy that all they can do is get there from A or B, from a defensive perspective at a high level, for me, it's pretty easy to shut that guy down completely.
Right.
Yeah. So I just enjoy learning. I mean, learning, it wouldn't matter if I was a 5-time Olympic champion or if I never even competed in college. If you're a coach, that doesn't make your result because you were a good wrestler. That's the goofiest thing I think we have in wrestling is thinking that you have to be this to be. People say to me all the time, well, how could he coach freestyle? He never wrestled. That is the silliest and maybe the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life. How can these guys coach professional NFL teams if they never play,
Yeah, Belichick and Saban and all those guys. Yeah, they were all terrible players, and they're the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's your passion. That's your love, and you learn. So I'm just a student of the game, and I try to constantly get better and, watch whether it's the men or the women, like what's making Japan so dominant? What's making China, a force every year on the women's side? And they have different things. They're a little more systematic, like a college program. But they got some really special things, and being able to, I'm so grateful for the Hawkeye Wrestling Club giving me the opportunity. I think I went to 25 countries, and I didn't go there necessarily like to watch the wrestling. I studied a lot of the coaches and the teams in the background to just see what makes them click, so those things are just a blessing. And I mean, that's what I like that more than the actual tournament, you know, at the World Championships. It's just seeing how they're operating, seeing how they're cooling down, seeing how they're warming up, seeing the level of intensity and maybe in the coach with the, you know, the pound for pound best wrestler. What, I mean, I don't understand what they're saying, but you can, the eyes, you know, and
Yeah.
the facial expressions, you can see the kind of energy that they're trying to feed off to them. So without them giving me this opportunity, I wouldn't have been able to grow in wrestling in the last couple of years, you know. So I don't think it's better or this or that. It's just, that's how I kind of operate. I just want to learn, and then try to give that back. You know, one thing I thought of a bunch here while I was here was IMAR. You know, I wish I would have paid attention more when I was in college and not been so stubborn where this is how I wrestle. I don't need that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Just a typical dumb kid that was successful. But I really paid attention here this time on the fundamentals at Iowa and the hand fighting. And what they're doing, Tom and Terry, is very unique and special in its own right. There's nobody that can hand fight like the Iowa Hawkeyes. There's nobody that's doing it. Even when we wrestle Iranians, when Gilman wrestles Iranian, that dude breaks. You know, they just can't handle it. When the Iowa, you know, past great Iowa guys have wrestled good Iranians, I'm not saying they always win, but the hammer's being laid down by the Iowa guy in the hand fight, you know. And they do some really, really special, unique things where if I would have paid attention more, I could have passed that off maybe better to Imar, and he could have been a better version of himself. You know, those kind of things run through my head all the time where why not try to learn? You know, if I get to a certain point where I'm just, I don't know, you know, thinking I know everything, you don't. You never will.
Yeah. So my next question was going to be what do you think maybe you learned from Tom and Terry that was special, and maybe what was something that you think, you know, that you added to their repertoire? You mentioned hand fighting, and I hear that word so much, and I think it's like what play wrestling was a couple years ago, where everybody's saying it. Maybe not everybody actually knows what it means or to use it or everything else. But, you know, what makes what Tom and Terry or the University of Iowa or whoever you want to brand that as, what makes their hand fighting so special, so effective?
I mean, the angles, the control, you know, it's like anything. I like that underhook a lot, you know, that Imar or like Gilman. It's safe, it's a control, and it's wearing on guys. You know, it really taxes you, that hanging that arm on the upper back. If a guy's, you know, kind of like Chinzo floats off, you know, like even though he's doing that, it's straining and it wears on you. Yeah. You know, when those foreigners are floating off those, you know, Yazdani's underhook, like they might not be scoring, but they're in complete defense mode, and it's wearing on them. So just all the tricks. I mean, they're the two of the best Americans of all time. There's a reason. It's not just because they wrestle hard. You know, there's a lot of skill in there. There's a lot of just savviness on Tom and Terry. You know, I mean, they're the best that have done it in America, you know. And so to not pay attention and to not learn from that would be silly on my part. But I can't give out all the little tricks, but they you know, they're very, very unique at it. I mean, that's why Iowa consistently has a lot of guys dominating in that style, is they are doing something very unique and special. And so it's yeah, I mean, it's been awesome. You know, I should have paid attention the first time, but I didn't.
Just makes you a better coach, though, so it's good. Yeah. You get it off when you're 20, there's nothing left to do in life.
Yeah.
I think one of the questions that a lot of people have, too, is how involved is an RTC coach with the college team? Like, I think, at least, you know, my understanding is a lot of the college team members are also RTC members. Mm-hmm. Those guys can then train with your senior level guys, like a Spencer Lee can train with like a Clark and a Gilman and those guys. You know, but like, are you actually in the college practices, or is that, you know, how is that set up?
Yeah, pretty involved, you know, not honestly this year, not as much. They had a good energy. More if I, you know, a pump man or say something to Ryan or Tom or Terry, like, hey, be aware of this guy, be aware of this,
Yeah.
or just, saying something to one of the athletes. But they had they're rolling. They're rolling right now. They got a lot of good things going. So I didn't want to add too much, try to be too involved. They didn't need it. They don't need me, kind of deal. They're flying, so just doing my part, the best I can. And it was a lot of fun, I don't know whether saying something to Tom or Terry or, even Kimmer, like, hey, I think this is there. I think that, or,
Right.
Bull, like, don't play with fire. Don't go there. And then he goes there anyway. But, whatever I could do to help. But, they got such right now between the board of the Hawkeye Wrestling Club and the Iowa program and the club, I think they're in as good of a place, as you can be. That's what you strive to where they're at, and they can only grow, especially on their financial end. They're doing really, really well with that inner circle, and I think that's going to explode more and more over the next 5-10 years. Look at their fan base. I think they have well over 600 people contributing in a year since we started it. So they're flying. They're doing. They're number one. They were, the uncrowned national championship team that dominated the whole season.
Huge favorites going to the tournament.
I did, they didn't need me that much really, but just do your part.
So that's an interesting thing because, they were rolling. They were at the top. Arizona State's obviously a program with history, but isn't the number one team in the country. Mm-hmm. Do you see your involvement? Obviously you'll be on the RTC side, and we're gonna start talking about that and some of the athletes and things like that. But how much do you see yourself being involved with the collegiate athletes?
So that was a bit, there's a couple things that really drew me that direction. Like I said, when it first came to me, I didn't even make sense because all I was thinking about was we were supposed to make the Olympic team 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And then we were supposed to get ready for Tokyo. And that's something, as crazy as a wrestling buff as I am, I've never been to the Olympics, even to watch. So that was pretty important. That was pretty important on the
same way. Yeah.
But, there, obviously I'm going to be in an assistant coaching position. So I'm going to be tied in with the guys. And that's something I missed, Again, you do your part, but to have that connection like me and say Gilman had, or some of the women, have, or I've had in the past, like I missed that. I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss that. I feel I'm good in all areas that of coaching, or definitely I'm capable of performing at a high level, whether it's recruiting or fundraising or administrative, all the areas. But the part we all enjoy the most is the relationships and the coaching, so being able to they have a great group of big guys, Arizona State. They got some super athletes on that team up and down the lineup, They're very, very athletic. So to have that, to go out there and be able to build those relationships with some of the upper weights and wherever Zeke tells me to, really.
Sure.
I'm excited about that. And then on the club side, it's not completely separate there, but, the plan we have, the practices are different. The practices will be a little bit different, but I think I'm going to be a lot more busy and a lot skinnier. I'll be on the mat a lot more. So I'm excited about that. That's real. That's something that I miss, want to get back to.
Awesome. I think people, I'm obviously older than you, but I think people that are really young that are listening or watching this may not really understand the importance of the Sunkist kids in the history of wrestling and Art Martori's place in the history of wrestling, literally in saving wrestling as an Olympic sport. So to be working, for Art, but, basically representing his brand, somebody asked, I was, the most terrifying podcast I've ever done was with Art Martori because he was awesome once we got started, but you're like, oh my God, it's like talking to the Godfather. You're like, this is a guy, he's such a big deal. Walmart buys stuff from him. That's when you're kind of making it okay in the world.
Yeah.
What is that like, to have, I know you obviously have a personal relationship with Art because you guys run in the same circles at the elite level of wrestling, but to now have, an official relationship where you guys are working together to try to bring, world and Olympic medals to Sunkist. What's your level of excitement there?
Well, first, I actually have never met Art in person, and I need to say thanks. I've been very fortunate once I got left Cal Poly, Coach Azevedo and Wayne Boyd and those guys and Andy, that's when Titan Mercury started. And I think we originally started with like 6 or 7 or 8 guys, I've been with them the whole run, and without Andy Barth in my life, who knows where I would be. Every international experience I've been able to experience is because of him, so I'll forever be grateful. It's hard, to go to the other side, the enemy side. I've done it before, but
Yeah.
it's not intentional. I have nothing but love for him. I mean, my family, they've supported us, and given me, I can't even tell you, 25, 30 opportunities to see the world, more probably, because I've been to several places multiple times. But Andy has been huge in my life and many others, and I'll forever be grateful. So I've always been on that Titan Mercury side. So make that switch. It's definitely sad, but I'm really excited. Like I said, I know the history of Sunkist. I know the history of Art and Kim and what they want, and I'm super, super excited. My thing is going in ready to work. I'm not going to let those guys down, and just grateful. Again, grateful for what Andy's given me. It's hard. I feel bad, but I know this opportunity is unique and special, and I'm not going to let those guys down. I'm going to work hard, and I know he's a winner. I mean, I know what he's done for how many world and Olympic champions he's helped guide, so being up there as one of his top guys of Sunkist, I'm not going to let him down. No way.
Yeah, I think Art Martori and Andy Barth are, two of the biggest unsung heroes in wrestling.
Sure.
And I know they have so much mutual respect for each other, but those are the kind of guys, if I could take them to lunch once a month and I could pay, I would do it every month, no matter where I had to fly to. There's the wisdom and the intellectual generosity and the financial generosity of those guys is incredible. Yeah.
We would never be where we are without them. I mean, it's that simple,
It is that simple.
Wrestling is a very, we're growing. Like, again, I mean, I'm so happy where I was moving forward, on the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. They're doing great things. Randy Novak and the board and Tom and Terry. And I mean, that thing's just building. It's building into a monster. But, Titan Mercury's part of it. Sunkist has been a part of it. They're helping these people fly all over the world. And those bills add up. I watch them like a hawk. And, the bills add up really quickly, and you're just talking about one college program. Imagine funding the entire nation, So those guys are, the unsung heroes of wrestling. And I'm excited to have them in my life, and I'm ready to make that next step.
Yeah, I had Frank Molinaro on the show about a week or so ago, and Fritz and I have been friends for about 100 years. So, I know you'll be partnering up with those guys and Zeke, and Arizona State's got an interesting staff because most staffs are like, okay, like Oklahoma State's all Cowboys, Iowa's all Hawkeyes. And I think that's how most people do it. They have this, sort of potpourri of knowledge coming in from different areas. How do you anticipate, your learning curve going there? Like, where do you think you might be able to help them, and where are you looking forward to learning from some of them?
Well, from the staff itself, that was another part that was really important. Frankie and I are really close, so I know that relationship's going to be great. Me and Lee have been, we've been close as far as, we've never really hung out, but we've talked hundreds of times on the phone. And, he's one of the best recruiters in the country. I mean,
Yes.
bottom line. And he does, and there's a lot of other things that he does very, very well. But when it comes down, hear people talk about, well, this person's a recruiter, this person. No, this guy's one of the very, very best. He's annoying with recruiting against. He's just on him. You know, so he's made me a better recruiter when I was at Cal Poly competing against him. You know, he'll break those kids. You know, he'll wear on them. So, and he's got great energy. He's a fun guy to be around. Personality wise, you know we click really well. So I'm excited to be around Lee. I worked with Frankie. I've had a great relationship with him forever. And I just know he's a young, hungry lion right now, you know, and I think everybody around him is only going to help him develop as a coach. And when you're hungry and you're young like that, there's going to be a big impact made. You know, there's going to be a big impact, whether it's in the room or the areas that Zeke, you know, pushes him to make an impact in. He's going to do great. And then Zeke is just, you know, I mean, if you follow his career, I mean, he's a winner. He's a winner and he's a hustler. He has a lot of the same tangibles as those other guys and myself, but he's done it as the leader. He's done it as the leader, and he's done it time and time. And, you know, he was the guy that put these RTCs in place.
Yeah.
And so I followed him. I had a really close relationship. Not close, but over the phone, he was sending me video, doing things for me that he really didn't need to, because I didn't even have a dog in the race back then. You know, so I was really appreciative of that at the time. That's sending me those videos, learning, you know, being able to study wrestling and stuff. And I know he's a business-minded guy and he's a hustler. He wants more and more, you know. So being able to be a part of that whole staff, I think it's going to be pretty awesome. You know, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's, from a personality-wise, I think we're all pretty high energy, and I think the cohesiveness of it all could be pretty special.
Yeah, Frank told an interesting story about how when he was first coming on the international scene, you know, he wasn't obviously like one of the top 3 or 4 guys, and he sent a letter to Zeke asking what he needed, or an email, what he needed to do to make it. And he goes, I figured I'd never hear from him. And he goes, 2 days later, he sent me a 3-page email detailing exactly what I needed to do, not just encouragement, but these were the situations and positions that I had to improve on and how to improve upon them. And I use this term intellectual generosity a lot because, you know, I think people work a whole lifetime to be really an expert or have expertise in something, and people then that give that away so generously are special. And that's a really cool story. I think the other thing that everybody wants to know about with your situation is what's going to happen with the girls you were coaching at Hawkeye. For people that don't maybe follow the women's game as closely, like who are the top flight girls there? Who are the ranked at which weights, and how do you anticipate that shaking out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Sunkist is probably one of the, I mean, definitely them and Tight Mercury, but, you know, supporters of women's wrestling, one of the biggest supporters of women's wrestling. A lot of the top girls, you know, you look at Helen and Allie and Kayla and Macy and Maya. The list goes on and on. You know, they've Kelsey Campbell. They've supported women's wrestling at the highest level for a long, long time. Like you said, Sunkist has got a storied history of 44 years, and they were really the front runners, you know, that started it all for the women. So they're very supportive of women's wrestling. They want to do that. You know, will the women come? I hope so. You know, I think, I mean, you know, I mean, when you spend 95% of the time with one coach, you know, and it's not college. This isn't college. This is about you. This is about winning an Olympic gold medal on world championships. And not to say that there's not loyalty, because they love Iowa. They love Iowa, and some could stay at Iowa, you know. But the thing is this is about, you know, them. They didn't go to college there. So I could see, you know, I could see them moving. I'd be lying if I said we hadn't talked about it, you know. But I also had to get the job. You know, the bird came out of the bag like pretty fast, you know. And so, you know, I got to get there and, or, you know, talk with Art and Kim and Zeke and just, you know, figure out all the details. But I think they could build something amazing there for women's wrestling at the senior level. And I know Iowa can, and so can Penn State and Oklahoma State. and any other school in the country that wants to. You know, I think that movement is coming. Will that, you know, whether they come or they stay, will that change the direction? Say all four stayed, that Arizona State's going to go with women? No, none. You know, will it change Iowa? No. You know, if they're committed to it, then great things will happen. And it's coming, you know, the movement of women's wrestling is coming. And,
Yeah.
you know, I really enjoyed being a part of it and helping. And obviously I've been around the top senior level girls, like, you know, not just our girls, but overseas, you know, with Terry Steiner and the national team. But that's the first I've ever really been around high level women athletes, even as an athlete, you know, that the way they think, the way they operate, the way they train, you know, I mean, it's not much different than the people I've been around, you know, in the time when they were whipping people's tail, like, you know, whatever, Imar, or Jesse or Gilman or
Yeah.
Brent Metcalf when I was his teammate. You know, they're focused, they're hungry. They want to be the best in the world. And when you want to be the best in the world at something, you're usually pretty unique. You know, you're usually pretty a little different. The way your mind works, you know. So it's been amazing being around them, and I think that's going to continue to grow all throughout the country here.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned a lot of things there, but, you know, when you think of Sunkist, you know, one of the pioneers of women wrestling was Trisha Saunders, and, you know, that goes all the way back.
Oh
Trisha
yeah.
and Saunders all the way back to Sunkist. And, you know, just as the outside looking in, it makes sense if those girls train together and they help. You know, one of the most important things, I think, I mean, I coached college for a lot of years, and
Yeah.
it wasn't until we started recruiting where we started winning a lot, and you start realizing that at a certain point, recruiting is maybe just as important, if not more important than coaching. You're not going to win a lot of horse races with Clydesdales.
Yeah.
You know, you got to get your racehorses.
Mm-hmm.
If those girls can stay together as a block, they're going to help each other get better. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see if, like you said, if a couple matriculate to you or all of them or none of them, you know, obviously the economics of that will have to be a factor. I think it's awesome that both, you know, athletes of all genders are being paid to wrestle. You know, they're getting stipends or getting housing. They're, you know, they can concentrate on this. It wasn't that long ago where like places like Home Depot and Lowe's were offering people part-time jobs around their hours, you know, which was awesome of them, but still obviously not ideal to be competing against these other countries. So
Yeah, and look at the difference in the result. You know, that's why the people, I mean, look at the difference in the results since the full focus has been on just them training, the men or women, you know.
yeah.
And like I said, what I was doing and Ohio State, Penn State, several, Arizona State, you know, committing to the senior level is why we're winning at the cadet, at the junior, at the U23, at the senior. And the more and more support, more people that support that, it doesn't matter what institution that you support at the college level, but if you're supportive of the professional level, it's going to help all levels grow. You know, when you have young kids that are 14, 15, whether they're women or men, get the opportunity to come in and see and roll around with, you know, their heroes. Like that makes an impact. That makes an impact. You know, so
huge.
it's
Yeah,
been
when you
awesome to be a part of it. It's only skyrocketing right now. It's only going to get bigger. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun to be a part of. And I'm a huge believer and supporter of that movement.
Yeah, the USA wrestling camps where, you know, those younger, like you said, cadets, juniors, those people get to, the guys and the girls get to be in that big wrestling room with the senior level athletes, and, you know, maybe even like play around, spar with them afterwards. You know, I know, like when I was 11 years old, I watched Dave Schultz do a front headlock on Kevin Jackson and like almost broke his neck. And I went over and I asked my dad, I go, what did he do? And he's just over there sweating like crazy. My dad walks me over there and he goes, my son has a question for you. I'm like, and literally for 15 minutes, he showed me what I did. Well, and to this day, I remember that. So I think those kind of things are hugely impactful on kids' lives, and especially at those ages where we're not so jaded. You know, like it makes a big impression, and people, you know, hey, this guy does put a singlet on. This girl does put her singlet on one leg at a time. You know, I can do it. So it's super cool. What's next for you? You're obviously, you can't do anything until the quarantine gets lifted. So I mean, are you able to make some progress on Sunkist right now over the phone and stuff? Or
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it. Obviously, number one is getting our house sold. You know that we don't want two mortgages. So number one is getting our house sold, and I think everyone is. This whole thing has been a little weird because because of the coronavirus. So once that hopefully ends, we'd like to get out there, even maybe before that, but getting our house sold, what we can do is no different than if I was there right now, so work,
yeah,
just like just work, from home and work hard. It's not like you're doing everything every other college coach is doing or freestyle coach is doing. They're not just sitting at home doing nothing, so
right. Yeah.
do what you can from home, get organized, get ready. And then when we finally can hit the mats, we're hitting the ground running, so we're busy and doing your part that you can do from home.
I guess the last thing I'd ask you is, obviously you're coaching a bunch of senior level athletes like Gilman, but a lot of the girls like you're talking about, like, Allie sticks out to me because she's from right across the river here in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And I was in, they're all ranked like 1 or 2 or 3 on the ladder. Some of them are waiting, some of them are the number 1 seed in the bracket, things like that. Mm-hmm. And coaches all the time talk about training cycles, like peaking. And like you said, you went from peaking these athletes for the first weekend in April to who the hell knows what's going to happen and when. So, in terms of talking to athletes now, because I think a lot of coaches watch this, what do you do to kind of keep your athletes mentally, encouraged, not getting stale, and, as opposed to this, like a lot of people, like, I'm just going to sit around and wait, or I can only do so many push-ups and pull-ups. I mean, what kind of things do you try to do to keep them and yourself sort of mentally and physically, stimulated and growing?
Yeah. Well, when it first happened, it's obviously really hard. I mean, everyone knows, imagine the college guys, that lost CNCAA championship. I can't even, for me, who are, is super emotionally invested in wrestling, I can't imagine being one of those college guys. I just feel terrible for all those kids, and obviously I know it happened in other sports and there's so much more in life, but still, when you're that athlete in that moment, in that time, that's all that matters to you in life, at that time, so that's very hard to deal with. So the immediate aftermath of the Olympic trials being canceled was hard for a lot of those guys, as you can imagine, very, very difficult. They're ready, they're primed, they're hungry, and then boom, it's just, it's not even happening. So, but the reason they're so good is because they're professionals. They're not 18, they're not young kids. And even young guys, the ones that usually are successful at 18, 19, it's because they train and act like a professional. Kyle Snyder, hence, he was doing things at a high level at 17, 16 years old, that other kids weren't. But, they're focused. I think the thing is a lot of them, I believe, and I'm sure other coaches believe this too, but what I preach is you're going to be a better version of yourself in a year. You're already ready to win it. But, for instance, my conversation with Gilman is he was ready. And, he's very ready for anybody on the planet from any aspect. All his T's are crossed and his I's were dotted. He was ready to go. But, he's in his prime. I mean, he literally is in his prime right now, prime years. And physically and mentally, I think he's in a good place. So you can be a better version. You can be a lot better version, and not everyone can say that. And some guys will, some won't. But I know he can be. And same with a lot of the women. So even some of the guys that maybe from the media perspective weren't in the picture of making the team, they can be in a better position in a year. So you have to try to be as optimistic as possible about it. It isn't easy to deal with, but if you're a professional, you'll be in a better position, knock on wood, not just our guys at the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, but the nations can stay healthy and nothing happens. But we can be in a better position as a country. We can use, it can be a positive. It doesn't have to be a negative, and that's where being a professional is important, So I have no doubt, no matter where all those athletes are, whether they're at Penn State or they're at Iowa or Sunkist or they go to the training center, is they're all going to be a better version of themselves in a year because they're professionals. They're training every day still multiple times a day. They're eating right. They're getting into, everyone's different. Some get into their scripture. Some get into just reading their mind. There's a reason they are where they are. And it's not because of me, it's not because of anybody else. It's like I tell them, it's because you're special. You're unique. You're special. And sometimes athletes have a hard time realizing how unique they are. So these times test you, but they also they'll make them a lot better moving forward.
Yeah, well, such an encouraging last thing to say because it makes, the 2021 Nationals, the 2021 Olympic trials, and, the 2021 season are going to just be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's how you have to look at it, right? Because, you can't control this. You got to learn from it. You got to roll with the punches. You got, like you said, professional. I think when you're young, it's maturity level. It's sort of the same way of saying that a different way. The most mature people, the people that control the controllables and leave the rest in, whoever's hand they believe in, generally make the most progress in times like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, look, man, I always appreciate, you and your family, you, Chris, John, Kathy, you guys all have been very generous, with my family. I really appreciate it. I should just let everybody know if anybody's trying to buy a house in Iowa City to hit you up, find you on social media.
Let me know.
Try to help expedite that. That's a free one, no commission on that. So
Okay.
it works out for you.
Nice.
Let's catch up in the fall after you've gotten down there and everything and kind of see how your first 120 days.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Mark Perry. I'm David Americatani. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe.